His father came in the next morning and said, I want you to know, Roy and I have broken up.
I had to keep a fire lit in myself to let myself know, look, you by yourself now. Either you gonna do or die. It's just like one of them game chickens. And you either go over there and go kill something, or something gonna kill you.
Roy took control and vowed to hold on to it. He refused to hire a promoter. He refused to play the game of boxing the way it had always been played.
Everybody said I couldn't do it. You can't possibly get to be world champion without being affiliated with some of the top promoters, so you're not going to make it.
Roy founded his own promotional arm called the Square Ring. Less than a year later, he was in his first title fight, challenging Bernard Hopkins for the middleweight crown.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Roy had broken his right hand before the fight and called on the tough training of his father to pull him through.
If Jones fights the way I think he's going to fight, he's going to be well on his way to superstardom.
He dedicated the fight to his dad as he fought the bout with one good hand.
I said, Roy, you don't have to take this fight. We can postpone it.
No one knew he was fighting in excruciating pain. Not the press, not his opponent.
I was like, this is my big moment. I'm one-handed, but I still got to shine. And I hit him with a combination. Bam, bam, bam. And people don't realize you go through that kind of pain, but I had to.
Now the IBF middleweight champion of the world, Roy Jones Jr.
Nearly 5 years after the Olympic fiasco, Roy Jones Jr. finally held a professional title.
Electrifying. The gleam in his eyes, the gleam in my eyes, the whole camp was just, you know, we've got a world title. We got a world title. I mean, we're on the road now.
I was just very happy to get the pressure of becoming a world champion off my back.
After the fight, Roy told reporters he'd lay the belt at the feet of the man who made it possible, his father. But Roy Sr. refused to see him.
I love him, but he is the most stubborn person that ever lived.
Roy Jr., he made several attempts to make amends with my father, but my father wasn't really open to it because they had different views on what happened.
In 1995, Roy Jr. beat the undefeated James Toney for the super middleweight crown. It was his second title in 2 weight divisions in less than 2 years. Skeptics had become believers. Roy was rated pound for pound the best boxer in the world.
He's Miles Davis. He's Picasso. Roy is just naturally gifted with instincts, reactions, abilities that other fighters don't have and will never have.
Roy had captivated the boxing world with his power, his speed, the distinctive style he learned from his father, and his fighting roosters.
He's really full of self-confidence.
Roy is an animal. Matter of fact, the move that he used on Tony when he fought him, when he did like this, and Tony mimicked him, and he caught him with all those hooks. That's a chicken move.
Roy had become the champion his father had trained him to be. He lived the dream they'd shared all his life. But even 3 years after their bitter split, there was no common ground. The family was torn apart. Up next, the fearsome power of Roy Jones Jr. A champion avenges his only loss in the ring.
That night he didn't smile. He got in there, he went right at my tail.
Roy Jones split with his father to gain complete control of his career. Inside the ring, he was always in charge, dazzling opponents with his power and speed.
It is over! Roy Jones Jr.
When Roy gets in the ring, everything slows down. He sees it coming before the guy even throws it.
Critics began to complain that his remarkable control resembled caution, that Roy Jones Jr. exposed himself just enough to win his fights.
Some of Roy's fights look like sparring sessions because the difference in talent is so obvious, and yet Roy doesn't seem to want to maximize that difference and take it through to the obvious conclusion of a quick finish. It's almost as though he's practicing his art.
Roy is a boxer. Roy's not a fighter. Roy will not fight unless he gets in a confrontation where he has to fight. And that's being smart.
And then you saw me reluctant warrior, this and that and other. That's just, I got a little bit more sense.
To Roy, the point of the fight was to win. And even coasting, he was undefeated and seemed undefeatable.
Roy's in a situation where he's so much better than the people in his weight class. So it's not fair to him for people not to give him his just due.
I really feel that he came into boxing at a bad era. I mean, I just think it's really, he makes these guys, these are great fighters, but he makes them look like they're nothing.
In the history of boxing, great fighters have always had great rivals. Ali had Frazier. Leonard had Duran. The lack of a true challenge to Roy Jones Jr. was leaving fight fans cold. His pay-per-view events generated only modest sales.
I quickly got opponents that people look at for the big name. You know, I don't have the opponents that other people have.
There is no such thing as not having an opponent. Part of being a good promoter is to find opponents, to build up opponents. He insisted on doing his own promotion, and that was a mistake.
I remember telling him I knew we could get a lot more money if we would tie in to this promoter or that promoter. He wanted to maintain his independence.
Roy ignored his critics and his advisors and continued his efforts at self-promotion. He played point guard in a U.S. Basketball League game one afternoon and defended his title later that night.
Roy thinks he'll make his Eric Lucas fight more interesting to the public by playing basketball the morning of the fight. Well, of course, he makes the fight less interesting to the public because the statement he makes is that this fight is so easy that I can play basketball on the morning of the fight and I'm still not worried about losing.
In the fall of '96, he moved up another weight class to light heavyweight and again easily won the title. But the next fight would blindside him. Roy entered the ring against Montel Griffin expecting his usual fight, controlled, confident, wearing down his opponent before finishing him off in the later rounds.
I wanted a good clean fight.
But Griffin disrupted his plan, putting him off balance with his strange and awkward style.
It was interesting because it was the most frustrated we've ever seen Roy in the ring.
Don't work in this corner. Get him back. Get his back too.
It took 9 rounds, but Roy finally had Montel against the ropes. And when it seemed he was going down, Roy kept punching.
And Griffin's knee goes down, and Jones lands 2 punches after Griffin's knee was on the canvas.
Roy Jones is going to be disqualified.
The referee disqualifies the red corner.
I know he went to his knee, but I didn't know if he was on his knee for sure or what. I ain't got time to stop and say, well, let me look and see if you're on his knee. I got to do what I got to do.
You can't be in the middle of jumping off a bridge, and once you leave the bridge, say, oh, I don't want to jump, I want to go back up.
The impossible had happened. Roy was disqualified and took the first loss of his professional career. Griffin gloated in his victory by default.
I was taking it to him, I was making a miss, I was catching with a jab, his face was all swollen up, and I thought I was winning fair and square.
That was very